All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the July installment of the Faces of Agriculture and USDA Speaker Series, hosted by the USDA Office of Partnerships and Public Engagement. The purpose of the Speaker Series is to connect students and with current USDA researchers, scientists, technicians, engineers, foresters, and other STEM-related program managers to learn about their story, career path, and exciting projects and initiatives they may be working on at USDA that serves the public interest, while helping to inspire the next generation of the agricultural workforce. In addition to today's speakers, we invite students to visit USDA's Youth and Agricultural website to learn more about internship, scholarship, and other great programs for youth. The website can be found at usda.gov/youth. Before we begin, we ask all attendees to turn off their cameras and place their devices on mute. This event will be recorded, and a copy of the recording will be available to participants by the end of the week. We welcome and encourage questions for our speakers. If you have questions for our speakers, please place your question in the chat box and we will address all questions at the end. I want to take a moment to thank our speakers and participants for taking time out of your busy schedules to learn and grow as a community. Without further delay, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Kevin Connor serves as a television production specialist at the USDA Office of Communications, Creative Media and Broadcast Center. Kevin started his federal career as an intern at the Internal Revenue Service and the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, while enrolled at the University of Maryland, majoring in radio, TV, and film. Upon earning his degree from UMD, Kevin was hired by APHIS, where he directed, produced, videotaped, and edited informational and educational videos. After 7 years at APHIS, Kevin moved on to USDA's Office of Communications to produce, direct, and edit all USDA program areas. Kevin films anything from USDA agency programs, video, messages from the USDA Secretary and Deputy Secretary, to wildland fires and veterinarians checking the health of killer whales at SeaWorld. Additionally, Kevin is a technical director and engineer for USDA live events for all special emphasis programs. Kevin is a native of Prince George's County, Maryland. He loves to crab and fish at the Chesapeake Bay, is an avid hockey player, and is the most diehard Washington Caps fan. Through his work at the USDA, Kevin had the opportunity to meet and work with celebrities, presidents, members of Congress, farmers, ranchers, scientists, researchers, and everyday people that have impacted others across the United States, sharing the many programs and services offered at USDA. With that, welcome, Kevin. Thank you for being here today.
Hey, Julio. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. So I got my whole rundown there of what I do for USDA, but I started out as an intern for working for the IRS, and I had to take the federal test and all this stuff to learn how to type and do these type of things. Um, but once I got into the government, my job at IRS was terrible, and I'll be honest with you, it was a very mundane job, but I got my foot in the door. And so I think part of that is, once you get your foot in the government, it's a really good place to be for a lot of people. And I did start at APHIS, and I was a GS2 clerk typist, just to get my foot in the door. Even though I was a television, I was going to school at University of Maryland at the same time for radio, television, and film. And uh, I had some mentors and mentees along the way that really just said, "You stick with this, and things will work out for you." But there was people that really helped me along the way, and these mentors that I had just kind of believed in me. And as a student and thinking about the different careers that you might choose, um, there's a bunch of things that we do within video, and you'll see Preston, who's one of the best photographers that we have at USDA. So what I'm going to do, we're going to show a little video here, and I don't know, Julio, do you need me to share my screen?
Yes, go ahead and share it.
Okay. All right, I'm going to share my screen here with you all, and I have a video that we have put together just so I can show you. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. There we go. This is, so before I just want to set this up. This is for those animated a little animated sequence. We have a news story, and then we have a recruitment video. And this is for all the people that are graphic designers, um, people that are in multimedia, whether you're in television or film or radio. Uh, this is kind of what we do in creative media and broadcast center. So I wanted to give you a glimpse of the artwork that goes into some of these, the music. So for all you musicians that might be out there, there's a lot of opportunity in USDA to produce something like this. So the first part is animated piece. The second part is a news story that we put out for USDA, and the third part is a recruitment video. So I'm gonna start that. Here we go.
Once you have your official passport, you'll need to get visas for the countries you will be visiting, if one is required. Processing times vary by embassy, so you should apply for visas at least 45 days prior to departure.
Probably the most important step is to obtain country clearances for each country you will visit.
Why is that?
A country clearance helps both your agency and the U.S. Embassy in the country know when and where you will be located while you conduct official business. At the Kennedy Center in the nation's capital, comedian Betty White is the guest of honor, as the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Forest Service accepts her as one of their own.
So Betty White, on behalf of the Forest Service, I ask you to join us in the cause of conservation by becoming an honorary forest ranger. Your passion for animals, for nature, for wildlife perfectly suits you to our profession.
Her new job is the profession she dreamed of joining as a child, at a time when careers in the Forest Service were not as open to women.
Whether I've been a legitimate forest ranger or not, I've been working for the cause for the last 89 years, and I will continue to work for it as much as I can. I know this is an honorary position, but it's also one where I can use a voice to try to protect the remaining beautiful parts of this gorgeous world we live on.
Betty White told reporters she is passionate about conservation of America's outdoors and will use her new title to recruit others to share that message.
Try to spread the word to each other, one to one, how important it is to save that. Once you pave it over, it never comes back, guys.
In Washington, D.C., for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, I'm Pat O'Leary.
Moving!
Well, everybody, pardon me. I hope you enjoyed that. Excuse me. That was that last piece was just to show you how the collaboration between us and photography works. I mean, you see how exciting that footage is to jump out of a plane. And, that's just the firefighter site. So I would tell there's a job at USDA for every single person out there, whether you're agribusiness major, a veterinarian. Uh, there's so many jobs at USDA that are we touch everybody's life every single day, whether it's the clothing that you wear, the food that you eat. Um, so whether there's so many jobs at USDA that deal with every single part of everyday life. And that's one thing, when I came to USDA, I was young and I did not realize how big USDA was in as far as how far reaching it was. And, we're called the People's Department. We take care of everybody. We feed people at school lunch programs. So there's so many jobs for like a nutritionist and veterinarians and all these really wonderful things that make USDA USDA. And for me, I get to tell the story. Preston and I get to travel around, and we meet the secretary and all that, giving these important messages, but we get to meet the farmers, the ranchers, and the producers and the school lunch people, and you name it, we get to meet these people and tell their story and how vital it is for them to be out there and doing their job. And so it's fun for me to jump into everybody's world because my job never gets boring. Every day is different. I could be, and Preston will back this up as well. One day we could be on a fire, and the following week we're at a vet clinic, or we could be doing an announcement about feral swine, or there's so many different things. So I would say for all you communication majors, this is pretty much what this is about. This is about your writers, your graphic artists, your photographers, your videographers, your editors, producer, director, and that's kind of what we do. Another part of my job is doing the live events. And so we have live events that happen for Black History Month, LGBTQ plus month, you name it, Asian Pacific month. And we do these live events from, before the pandemic, we were doing it from the Jefferson Auditorium in the patio, and things were live. So we're doing live TV just as you would see on your television station. So that's kind of the things that we do. And so one of my recommendations to everyone out there is learn every job you can, because that's, I had some mentors that gave me things that I thought were way over my head. And whether it be I was a still photographer before I became a videographer. Pardon me. And it was one of those people that saw something in me. We were down a photographer, so I had to jump in and be the photographer. But I also had to jump in and be the budget person, and also had to be the secretary at the time before they called them administrative assistants. So one thing my grandfather told me is learn everyone's job in the office, because you can help each other out in a team environment. But he also said that in the sense that you won't get fired if you know everybody's job, because you're the hardest person to get rid of. And I probably, I'm making light of that, but the diversity of my job every day is what kind of motivates me. I've been doing this for 35 years. And I started out as all of you. I was a student. I didn't know I was working hard until, I started getting, I started as a GS2, and then when they offered me at 7, 9, 11, you would have thought the world I was good. It was kind of ironic, because I didn't realize how many people took care of me along the way and showed me the ropes and how to be a good employee, how to show up every day. The best part of my job is I really care about the work that USDA does. And it's my job as a producer, director, and a camera person and editor is to tell the story of USDA. And so I would say for all you writers, there's jobs for writers, graphic artists, photographers, anything multimedia now, and especially with all the web stuff that's going on with social media. Like USDA was never in social media. I mean, back when I started, there was no social media, there was no computers, there was none of that. So there's so many different jobs within our organization that you can find a spot. And I would recommend doing those pathway programs, the 1890s, 1990s. Um, you know, those are the type of programs that allow you access to USDA and to see what we do. And when you come there as an intern, you're gonna, I say, make the most of your internship, because you really need to take on some tasks that might be uncomfortable. And when you do that, there's a lot of people that will help you along the way. And so I think I would recommend that once you get into these programs, I mean, USDA is a great place to work. I've been here this will be my 34th year. And I had hair and I was young and I was skinny. But I love what I do every day, and I love the people I work with, and that's why they call it the people's department. And I say, bring all your outside experiences with you to these events, to these jobs, because whether you're a musician or you're a football player or soccer, whatever you do as a team, you bring that team environment to work, and people are going to want to work with you. And so I think I want to shorten this up a little bit. But I have this written down because I could not remember this. I said, I care about the people that we serve in USDA, which is everybody. And I love the people who work for us because they really, really care at USDA. I've never been around people that really care. If there's a problem, we fix it. And there's some really, really good people that will not let things go and do the right things to make this all work. So my job is basically to make everybody look good, but the stories that USDA are already telling themselves, it's my job to convey that. And our farmers and our ranchers, they tell the story. We're just basically the quarterbacks of the information. It's how we disseminate it, whether it's on video, social media, photography, and all that. And here's the one thing, along the way, I had a mentor who told me, look, I don't want to be here, you don't want to be here, but because we have to be here, let's have fun and get it done. And I thought that was a funny way of telling a young kid, we don't want to be here, but we have to be. So we have to make it a family type environment. Not that that works every time, but I think it really says to the quality of the people that we have working at USDA. And one thing, I just want to leave you with my last point, and it's a quote from Maya Angelou, and it says, people will not remember what you said. People I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. People will forget what you said. People forget what you did, but people will never forget the way you made them feel. And that's our job, is to make people that work at USDA and showing our programs. Thank you for the time, and I'll answer questions, but I want to turn it over to Julio, who's going to introduce the best photographer in my career that I've seen at USDA. He's amazing, and he's a great guy too. And my good friend Preston is coming up next. So thank you, Julio, for the time. I appreciate it.
Kevin, I greatly appreciate you being here and sharing your story. I think we were definitely excited for you to speak to our audience, because you helped us out a lot with Faces of Ag, and I think you're definitely one of the persons behind us sharing the story. So we greatly appreciate to be able to hear about your work, and I think you did a great job in helping me introduce our next speaker. So, but with that, I do want to welcome our next speaker, Preston Carres. Preston is a national photographer, videographer for the Farm Production and Conservation Business Center, or FPAC, where he produces visual content. Before transferring to FPAC, Preston served as a photographer for the USDA's Office of Communications, where he photographed the Agricultural Secretary and various national and international dignitaries during meetings at headquarters and events around the country. When not covering the Secretary, Preston would travel the country visually telling the story of America's farmers, ranchers, and foresters for all different USDA agencies. Preston received his start in photojournalism in high school, working on the school yearbook and newspaper in his hometown of Davenport, Iowa. However, he didn't seriously pursue photography as a career until he became a Navy journalist. During his time in uniform, he graduated from Syracuse University's military photojournalism program. He ended his 12 years in the Navy as the assistant editor for the All Hands magazine, the Navy's flagship publication. During that time, he was twice recognized as DoD's Military Photographer of the Year. After serving his country, Karras was offered a staff photographer position at the Washington Post, where he covered everything from high school, college, and professional sports to the war in Iraq and during the capture of Saddam Hussein. It was at the Washington Post where Karras fell back in love with video and storytelling. It was his passion for visual storytelling and his family's connection to agriculture that led him to seek a position at USDA. With that, welcome, Preston. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Julio. Thanks everyone for showing up here. And thanks, Kevin, for the kind words. He seems to always throw me a hard one here by always saying one of the best photographers kind of a thing. I've seen some great photography come out of USDA and worked with a bunch when I was at Office of Communications. So that's a very humbling statement. Let me, while I can, try to show my slides here. Hopefully you can see my main slide here. Is that correct, Julio? Are we good to go?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Good. I just wanted to give a, you had the bio there, and being a photographer and a visual guy, I would assume that we've got a lot of visual people here. So that's why I wanted to sort of show and give a brief background. Again, I don't mean it as a resume of some sort, but really try to highlight, highlight the fact that people in our position in the creative side of the house have a total distinct and unique background at times. We all don't come from the same cloth, is what I'm trying to say. Where you heard where Kevin came from, and the school and starting out at the lowest rungs of USDA and worked his way up. I was fortunate enough to, as Julio said in the bio there, was fortunate enough to be a public affairs Navy journalist while I was in uniform. And in that, we wrote stories and ended up taking pictures for those stories. We were trained in broadcasting as well, but it basically created this split. I went in to Navy journalism a little later in my Navy career. I first started in HR kind of stuff, but at any rate, my whole point to that is that fate sort of sent me down the print journalism side of the house instead of broadcast, and I'm really happy about that. The advantage I had as a journalist versus being just a plain photographer is that I found that my approach ended up being a little different when it came to visual storytelling. I thought of it as a writer. And so essentially starting at All Hands magazine, I'd end up having to write stories, whether it was here in Guatemala or, cover the folks on ship or whatever the case is. I'd end up having to write stories and provide the photos that go along with it. And I found that my photos ended up communicating a whole lot more to the story and had more impact to the story than my words did. And I think that's because I had a passion for photography and had a passion for what storytelling is. And I share that because I think no matter what job you pick or what profession you pick, it seems the common ground for success is if you have a passion for it. If you do something that you absolutely love, you never work a day never work a day in your life. And I can't tell you how honestly true that is. Now, when I was starting out, I mentioned in my bio, working the yearbook and stuff like that. Well, most of that stuff was sports. And when I got in the Navy and had off time, if I wasn't out traveling the world, luckily, to tell the Navy story, I would end up covering sports. And that fortunately got me into, freelancing to various places and stuff. But it also allowed me to go cover key events, great events like the Olympics and, pro sports and things like this. This is Griffin, but it's what ended up landing me my job at the Washington Post. That, and then as well as this was one of the final events. I covered 9/11 while I was in the Navy. And my sports abilities made my photography abilities a whole lot better, how to see and how to capture great moments that for timing and all that kind of stuff that the folks at the Washington Post essentially, and not the photo editors, it was the design editors and stuff saying to the photo assignment editors, who is this Preston Karras? And I was fortunate enough to be offered a position. Now, coming from the Navy, it was interesting. They thought, because of military photographer of the year, they felt that, well, I must be, heavy duty in war photography and all of that. Well, truth be told, my whole time in the Navy happened to fall in between the two main wars, and I never really saw much action, if anything, really, other than some minor stuff. But beyond that, the Washington Post really taught me how to see the world, and more importantly, how to communicate to the world through my photos. And you saw there in those last few frames, essentially, the ability to try and cover, dignitaries and, presidents and things like that. And Julio, we're showing the other slideshow right now, correct? I'm hoping, but
No, we're at the Obama's acceptance speech slide.
Oh, still, okay.
Yeah.
Hold on a second then. Do you see Purdue right now?
Yep.
Let me try something. I'm wanting these to sort of start automatically going. There, you see Trump?
Not yet, still on Purdue.
Oh, hold on, I wonder why. Well, let me just I'll scroll through these by hand again. Sorry about that, guys. Little technical difficulties on my part. So essentially what that did was the experiences I had at the Post and the experiences I had at the Navy, and in your book, or in your world, essentially it's just practice and getting out to shoot and working your way up and trying to get as many diverse experiences as possible helped me, develop the skills that they needed at the Department of Agriculture. And working at OC, at the Office of Communications, essentially the #1 mission there is to follow the secretary around and be able to tell his story in an effective manner. Or, in this case, the deputy secretary. And in that way, I would end up finding myself not only showing you know, the face of the secretary or the dignitaries and stuff, but I want to more importantly cover the farmers and ranchers, because that's what we're here for, is to help tell their story. And so when I wasn't being asked to go cover the Office of Communications needs, whether it was, you know, shooting portraits in the studio or shooting passport photos or going down and taking photos of, you know, the meetings that the secretary would have, if he'd end up traveling or they weren't needing me, I was open to basically shoot stories for the various agencies around USDA. And just like Kevin said in his presentation, as you guys all well know, USDA touches everything that involves our life. I mean, it's obvious, the corn and soybeans and fields and crops and cattle and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of folks don't necessarily understand, you know, or relate clothes and commodities and stuff with Department of Agriculture either. And that is something that I really enjoy being able to highlight, is the various stories that USDA is involved in. And then more importantly, that it isn't just us out there doing things, there's actually great personality. As a photographer growing up, I was always paying attention to, you know, Dorothea Lange and the other Gordon Parks and the other photographers that would cover a lot of agriculture back during like the Great Depression era and things like that, and always envied their photography because it was showcased in a lot of my schooling growing up. And I was like, wow, you know, coming to USDA would be it, because I was able, as an Iowa guy who had family in agriculture, and I at that time sort of understood a little bit about the importance of what their job was. And then I was lucky enough where stars aligned to give me the skill set to be able to visually tell stories, and actually just tell stories, and have the camera be a tool that would allow me to do that. I was able to mix the two together and, you know, really make a great marriage with things that I cared about, which goes back to, if you're doing something that you love, you're never really working a day in your life. Well, I got to tell you, during this pandemic period, you know, with COVID, I wasn't out traveling a whole lot, or I wasn't able to go tell a lot of people's stories. I call this chicken photo heads or tails, just for your amusement. The pandemic kept me here basically locked up in the house like many of us. And it was real depressing in that sense. But by the time they finally allowed me to get out and cover things, I got to tell you, it reminded me of the joy we get to have with this job. It's a tough one, don't get me wrong. It's a job where you really work your tail off when we're out there, because if you're not, in my opinion, you're always missing something, and you have limited time to get coverage while you're out there. And it's important to make sure that I take advantage of every minute, literally every minute I've got while I'm out on the road. But I got to tell you, it brought so much positivity and happiness to me that I would never give it up. Wouldn't give it up for a million lifetimes. And again, the diverse subject matter that we get to cover, whether it's a sheep farmer in Montana or urban farmers out of the Bronx and tell them the importance of what the stories are throughout our country, I find to be extremely, extremely important. Because growing up in Iowa, I'm not sure how many of them truly understand the impact of what like an urban garden has, whether it was the Bronx or like here in Baltimore, and the impact that this has not only on their community by ensuring that they have good food to eat, because oftentimes a lot of these folks live in, you know, food deserts, but more importantly, the impact it has on the community personally, you know, developing friendships and sadly taking some folks out of a bad way of life and showcasing and highlighting a good way of life for them. At the same time, you know, it can be held true on the flip side of that coin to be able to showcase to a lot of folks that don't necessarily get to see, you know, what urban or what rural America looks like and really operates. In my view, I often try to find things that might not be seen. I call this corn dog. By, you know, they often see things like this at the fair or, you know, fields and things like that. But oftentimes there isn't context to it. And our job, Kevin and I, have a responsibility and a great mission sometimes to really provide an audience an understanding of why and what this exists and give them a different viewpoint by capturing the emotions or capturing the impact of what each different facet of agriculture offers and how it impacts, you know, someone in the heart of New York City or in rural Iowa. So looking at the time on this, Julio, it looks like Kevin ran way over and limited me to a small amount of time. So I can stop now if you'd like, and then we can go ahead and answer questions.
Preston, this is Ruby. You have about 5 more minutes if you'd like, and then we can take questions.
Okay, I'll do that. I was trying to throw a jab at Kevin.
I love it, Preston. I love it. These pictures are phenomenal, folks. I just want you to know that this is good stuff.
So, one thing I wanted to make sure you guys understood. I know Kevin mentioned early about graphic designers and things. One thing that I often keep in mind and need to keep in mind when I'm out shooting is my photos can run in various places, whether it's social media, you know, Instagram kind of things, or made for postcards or for posters, for blogs and, you know, news release kind of things. I have to keep that in mind when I'm out on shoots. So it's also nice because my time while I was in the Navy, sorry, that's my Great Dane. My daughter-in-law just came home. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, hold on 1 second here.
Okay, no problem.
Hawkeye, off. Off. All right. So essentially, I've got to keep that in mind, understanding that, hey, it's okay. They're home. That our designers need photos for a wide range of publications. And because of that, they're going to need various subject matter. They're going to need various compositions. in all types of things, whether they're doing, you know, faces of ag like this or something, you know, showing the various faces, or, you know, highlighting posters for recruiting and things like that. Essentially, we communicate with all the comms people that in turn, when I get out in the field listening to all the farmers and producers out in the field, I'm lucky because I have this experience and exposure to a wide range of what is offered at USDA. And it puts me in a unique position to do what I do and bring what I can bring to the table in a more impactful and effective manner. And, you know, a lot of different jobs have that ability, but I would argue that no one has more fun than I get to when I get to go out. I'd also argue there's very few that will work as hard. You know, I'm not saying that I work harder than anyone or everyone, but I am saying it's not all, you know, roses in this job, but the flowers sure smell good. Especially with the variety of different people you get to meet. And hearing their stories of how they became successful and all that kind of stuff. You really can't beat it. And it's fun also when they constantly reach out and say, hey, Preston, thanks for this and thanks for that story. It really, you made us look great. And oh, by the way, are you able to come up and, you know, we're doing this and that. Are you able to maybe come up and maybe cover us this year or this harvesting season and stuff? And you build relationships that you just don't find anywhere else. So yeah, working for USDA, working in agriculture really is something that wasn't really expected. I knew working for government was going to be good because working in the Navy was similar. It's a lot of positive storytelling, where at the Washington Post or working in the media, I don't want to say that's negative storytelling because I did a lot of positive storytelling there. But at the same time, you hold people accountable when you work for the media. That's their number one mission. And sometimes that isn't the, you know, for me, wasn't always the best mission, the most fulfilling kind of a mission. I love sports because it was always a positive side. But that was another reason why I wanted to come back to the government, was because it could be extremely positive. So yeah, I've been very fortunate for that. And with that, I guess we'll open it up for questions and see what you guys have got to say, and if we can help you guys a little more to the level that you want.
Preston and Kevin, thank you all so much. Definitely very inspiring. The media that both of y'all shared, you know, the video and the firefighters and all of these pictures are inspiring. I mean, the stories they tell just by, you know, quickly viewing them is amazing. So thank you both. If anyone has any questions, if you can please enter them in the chat. But in the meantime, I do want to get started with my first question, which I'm excited to hear what both of y'all say. What is the most interesting piece of media that you've shot or put together?
You want to go, Kevin?
No, I'll let you go first, man. I have to think.
Well, honestly, that's pretty easy for me because it just happened recently. It's a story that we just put up on Farmers Gov YouTube page. And you saw some of the photos earlier about the accidental shepherd. The reason why I like that was because it's one of the first times where I'm able to bring what I really envision as great storytelling to the from USDA, from my perspective. Oftentimes, we see a lot of technical kind of stories and things like that. And in my opinion, audience members really will gravitate towards great stories. And I learned that while I was at the Washington Post. I learned that while I was in the Navy. I learned that everywhere. And so in this situation, when we were interviewing Dominique, who happened to take over, and briefly, the story is she was helping this sheep herder with his farm and stuff, and he happened to commit suicide and left his flock to her. And she just absolutely loves these sheep and is, you know, by definition, a beginning farmer and wanting to try and take on the farm. Well, that's a big initiative for USDA. And well, in order to go out and tell that kind of story, we could just be pretty blanket. Okay, here she is, here she is with her sheep. But then getting her to help tell that kind of a story really added emotion to it. And I'd like to think sort of grabbed on to a few people, and hopefully we'll do more when more people are able to see it and we're able to promote it a little more widely, to have a really big impact. And just having the fact that we're able to do that in this position is, and I was allowed to do that, makes that one of my favorite pieces.
Oh, and Preston, you nailed it. It's like we get to go into people's lives, people that we would never ever meet, and you jump into their world. And you know, a lot of the questions I ask, you know, when I do an interview with somebody is, you know, yeah, we filmed you doing whatever you do at USDA or with USDA, but then when you ask them, tell us what makes you happy for the things that we did at USDA. And, you know, they tell the story because, you know, without USDA, I would not have whatever it is. You guys have helped me resurrect my business. You've helped me with my conservation issue. You've helped me do those type of things. That when you see somebody's heart just filled with joy for the stuff that we do. And see, Preston and I are just like the middle people in this. You know, we get the farmer after NRCS did their thing, or Forest Service, whoever, or APHIS. We're the middle guys, and we just get that story on the ground and then get to portray it to everybody, which I think is the best. But the one story I will tell you, Ruby, is my favorite thing I've ever filmed was that APHIS does inspections at SeaWorld. And nobody knew this. So I had to go to SeaWorld and I had to do an inspection of a killer whale with a wetsuit on at SeaWorld. And when that thing jumped up, I thought my wetsuit was wet from something else, because it was like, oh my God, there's a killer whale just jumped up. They do a blood test, they do a urine sample, all on command. So that was my most exciting thing to ever film, but it's the people. It's the people. We're the people's department. And like Preston says, we don't work a day in our lives. We get paid for what people go on vacation for, but we love our jobs. We love it, and we love telling these stories because it's very inspirational for others.
You
So
can definitely tell that both of y'all love what you do.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go to the next question that's in the chat box, and this one is for Preston. I have always, and there's another one too, I think they need some work done. I have always been fascinated with extreme weather and capturing storms on camera. Is there a career opportunity that involves news, insurance agencies, or scientists to have photographers and videographers document the destruction for both scientific and documentation purposes? I feel that Iowa would be the best location for this sort of job title.
There absolutely is. And, you know, just like what we do, there's opportunity everywhere, whether it is for the government. The government has its benefits to working for it and with it, you know, too long to really go into here in a sense. But, you know, in that world, I know a lot of freelancers as well that do weather and storm chasers and things like that. That some do it as a hobby, and but some are commercial type photographers, and freelancing enables them to um, shoot it and then market it, and that's how they end up making their living. When it comes to news aspects of things, I would I would almost feel that the broadcast world would be a much better location, but I would um, ask Kevin more about that. And the location wise, what was strange in Iowa, fortunately, I mean, what was it, a couple of years ago, they had that giant storm or whatever, but I don't know Iowa as being a massive storm center. I always think of like Oklahoma and Kansas, places like that, where if I was going to get into this and I wanted to sit right at the center of this to make it simple for me to, get out and do it in my backyard, it would be Oklahoma and or Kansas or something like that, or, Panhandle of Texas or something like that. Kevin?
Agreed. Norman, Oklahoma is the storm chasing area to be in. And that's, I would, freelancing is probably your best bet on that, because they're not going to hire you just as storm chase. You usually have to be with a weather agency or something on that level. So, Ruby, I think there's some more questions.
There is one for Preston, and Agricultural Marketing Service Livestock and Poultry Program is requesting some services, but they did want to say they've benefited from your work and they still continue to use your photos and recruitment outreach and marketing materials. And that's true. I recognize some of your photos on your slideshow and I said, I've seen those. So very familiar. Here's another question that just came in. How many positions such as yours are out there? I know some of our agencies have also worked with Lance Chung. And how are your stories assigned?
Well, yeah, some of our stories, like we have two different sides within OC. Preston and Lance work on the photography side with Tom Witham, who does, there's 3 still photographers. I think there might be a new one now, perhaps. But the stories aren't assigned. It's usually we get a phone call for NRCS is doing this, or FSA's got this announcement going on, and then we follow it after that to say how far reaching is that, or like if AMS is doing a grant program. And so what they do is with this grant program, they give it to, let's say, a farmer's market in a certain area. And how far reaching is the funding that USDA, how far does that go? And then we find out later that, with that $10,000 seed money, that there was 5 other jobs that were created on this job because of the money that USDA planted to help others out. So I think my point there was pretty much to say is our stories are related. We do have to cover the secretary and those kind of announcements for certain things, but usually the agencies contact us to go out and cover a certain program that they're doing. And then we come back, here's the video for it, but then we interview all these farmers and ranchers and whoever to tell the story. And we kind of make it our own. And I hope I answered that for that. So, Preston, sorry it took a little time, brother.
No, I'll make a comment. Each agency seems to now have a photographer or somebody working for them. But if they don't, I know reaching out to OC Photo is if you're wanting photography is a little different than the needs for CNBC if you're needing video production and stuff. With that said, I've had instances where folks have reached out to me from outside agencies. Doesn't happen often, but again, thankfully, I got to tell you, it really brings me joy when I know folks are asking me by name to go cover something because they like my work. And it's just like working at the Washington Post when you come back and you'd see something in the paper the next day. It's like you couldn't wait to get back out again. Well, I have that same feeling here. It's like, wow, when I walk down the hallways or if I go on social and see a photo up there, and it really is like, yes, okay, good. I'm making, at least some kind of an impact or a splash. And I see a lot of my photos, and that means a whole lot. So it makes me want to reach out or be available for whoever wants photos, and just, find my name in the global or whatever we call it, the directory, and hit me up, and I can try to send it up the food chain to see if they're, if it's doable or not. COVID's really caused us to really figure things out. But yeah, who knows? I was going to say, but now that this is over, but we just had a workshop that got canceled because of it. But I'm going to Arkansas here in 2 hours. I got to be at the airport. So.
Okay, so a couple questions. I know we had one more that I really want to ask, and I know we're close on time, but then we had a great question from a student, so I don't want to ignore that one. So first, the one from the student. What advice would you, Kevin, what advice would you give a college student interested in internships with USDA?
I would say there's so many programs that we have within USDA, and whether it's the 1990s, 1890s, or Pathways, I think is the other one. These are different ways to get in. And we also do non-paid internships. And trust me, you will come away with more experience from some of those non-paid. And I know that's hard for people depending on where you live. But there's so many programs, and I think Ruby and your group, you can help tell people where to go, because I really don't know, but I think it's just just get your foot in, just come even work with us for free. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it gives you so much experience that you can go anywhere and you'll be doing pretty big stuff.
Okay, one final question that I want to make sure, and well, I saved the best for last. With your skills, did both of you ever think you'd be working at USDA? And then what are special considerations you have when trying to tell agricultural story visually?
I'll go first real quick. The answer to that's yes. I always wanted to, once I was able to do this, wanted to work for USDA. As a matter of fact, when I applied for a position, but it was unfortunately too low pay scale for me to accept working here in DC. It's so pricey. But then I was fortunate enough a few years later for it to come back. And again, it's that Iowa farm family kind of a thing. My uncle and cousins are in agriculture, coupled with the fact that I love storytelling and visually doing so, really made a great marriage. And this was a place that was one of my ultimate goals.
And Ruby, I'll say I grew up, right down the street from where I started working at USDA, which I never thought. I mean, I live in Hyattsville, Maryland. My first job was at everything was in Hyattsville, Maryland. My high school, University of Maryland, was right down the street. And so I know we're short on time, but my point is, I grew up at USDA. I grew up as a GS2, and here I am all these years later. My first day on the job, they had me straightening bookshelves for 2 weeks. I mean, how many bookshelves can you straighten, right? And then I started showing interest in different spots, and then they just gave me all the tools that I needed. And here I am 35 years later, and I still love every day I go to work. And I work with good people like Preston Kears, who makes us all look good. I mean, those photos were some of the best. I mean, I still, he gives me chills when I see his photos. So thank you. That's all I have to say. I know we're running out of time.
Thank you both. And I just want to end with the comment that's in the chat box, but I want to read it to both of you. But it says, I just wanted to say the pictures and the videos were captivating. Media makes the work and the world of agriculture more real, and seeing the emotions and amazing views reels people in, not only for recruitment, but also for educational purposes. So thank you both again for joining us today. This concludes our July installment of Faces of Ag USDA Speaker Series. We would like to extend once again a thank you to our presenters and attendees for taking the time to learn and grow with us today. We invite all our attendees to visit our USDA Youth and Agricultural website at www.usda.gov/youth to learn more about opportunities to engage and empower the next generation of agricultural leaders. In addition, we would sincerely appreciate it if you could please complete the post-event survey you will receive along with the recording. We look forward to having you join us again in August when we will be featuring meteorologists from USDA's Office of the Chief Economist. Thank you again and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good one, guys.
Bye, everybody. Come work it with us.